Welcome to the podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories behind construction business leaders. We will share how they got started, how they found success, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Eric Fortenberry. Welcome to Builder Stories. Welcome back, everybody. Today, I'm here with Tyler Hunsberger. He is a project manager at Hunsberger Design Build. They're located in Harleysville, Pennsylvania. Tyler's a fourth-generation contractor. He's always enjoyed working with his hands, but has really found his passion in building relationships. I think he's done it for about the nearly, 15 years now. So really excited to have you on Builder Stories and to hear your story and how you got into construction. So welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that, and I'm happy to be talking with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't you kick us off with just, give us a little background, who you are, how'd you get into construction, what led you to your career and where you're at today?
Right. Well, my father is actually third generation. So Hunsberger Builders is my father for three. He would be the third generation. So we still have some old stories of my old school Mennonite conservative great grandfather driving his panel truck with his tools. And one of the funny stories is his employee got in one time and he saw the side panels on his truck with this beautiful red. And he goes, Why'd you paint this panel truck black? And he said, well, us Mennonite folks don't want too much attention. So I painted it black to just blend on in. So that's like the original old panel, 1952 panel truck. And he then had the business going when I was a kid, and I was on site from about 13 till probably through college, just as a carpenter. And I learned pretty quick that I am a people person. I do enjoy work with my hands around my house, but making a career of swinging a hammer, I wanted to be talking to people. I wanted to be doing vision. I wanted to be doing marketing. I wanted to be scheming out how to better lay out their space. So ultimately, I pursued the sales and design side, and had actually a good friend from church, Dennis Gaiman, and he has Gaiman Design Build, a high-end firm around here. So I told him I would love to work with you for a couple of years, and that turned into 7.5 years I was with him. So I did the sales, design, marketing side on that side of things in that business. And then what's really interesting is my father's company is, I would say, one of the only ones in the entire country that has had one customer for 25 years. He's had anywhere from 2 to 12 people working for him in the little town of Skipack near here. And most of that town is owned by one guy.
Wow.
And that guy is a major investor and has had my father restore the town quite literally. It's been over 40, 50 plus buildings now that have had complete restoration. And now you drive through and it has like this German vernacular architectural early colonial aesthetic. So it's very popular in the area. My father's company is kind of known for that. But what's interesting is he's never had marketing or sales or estimating. It's all been T&M through all these years. So that was one of my main motivations, to go out into the marketplace and learn that from somebody I trust and respected. And ultimately now we're starting to ease our way back into the marketplace after 25 years. So it's a very interesting time right now.
That's awesome. And so is that in your dad's company? So is that the same company that you're with now, or did you guys rename it, or what happened?
We've joined forces, and rather than being Hunsberger Builders like they were for all those generations, we're focused more on design remodel now.
Gotcha. Yep. I mean, you could have chosen a lot of different fields to go into. I mean, how'd you end up with remodeling and doing sales?
Well, I do really love actually talking with people about their space and how to improve their life, quite literally, through these changes in their home. I have sold other things out of college, and I didn't care, frankly. I just couldn't find a way to care about what I was selling. So since I'm so relationally focused, I love meeting with a family, finding out why their space isn't working, coming up with new ideas, getting them excited about talking about those spaces, and then ultimately walking them through what those steps look like and getting that job completed, and caring about their aesthetic and their design selection. So that's really where my passion lies, actually, in helping them see that all through.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm curious. So, like, is there, when you think about, remodeling, design build versus, like custom home building, like, did you ever explore that avenue as well?
Mm-hmm. Not so much. Just that market around here has changed drastically.
Yeah,
So new homes, we haven't been doing them for 25 years. Even the company I was at recently they hadn't done it for 20 years. Just in our area, it's mostly the large developers that are doing that or the specific custom homes. So it has the market's changed in our area. We have a lot of older homes in Pennsylvania, so there's a lot of homes to be remodeled.
sure. So why don't you walk us through like what is the full process of, you got a new lead, how do they find out about you? How do they get in touch? Kind of what does that full life cycle look like all the way through to getting the project going?
Well, I'd say a couple things I think people will find interesting since I've spent so much time on the sales side. I think that I am passionate about walking people through a sales cycle. Okay. So, like, an initial call comes in. One of the things that I always try to focus on whether or not it's a good or bad lead, I should be getting them excited about their project and kind of fanning the flame. So when they tell me they have a project and it might be too small, it might not even be, frankly, something I'm that interested in, but I can still feed them excitement for their project. I can still kind of ask how it's going to impact their life. And then when they tell me kind of specifically about that project, I can start not only qualifying my needs, but more so I'm focused on qualifying their needs the whole time. Like, even though I am qualifying them for myself, it should sound like I'm qualifying all of their needs specifically around a project. So what I like to do is if somebody tells me, "Hey, Tyler, I have a bathroom that I already have the tile in my garage and the vanity in my garage. I heard you guys do bathrooms. Does this sound like something we could do?" Rather than being like, that's not a great fit for what we do, I can communicate to them more so about, well, it sounds like good job. You've already gotten through the design. You've already gotten through all your selections. You already know where everything is going. It sounds like you wouldn't have to pay me to do any of that. See, we're a design build approach and qualifying that we might not be a great fit for them, but I can still refer them in a positive direction. I can still keep them excited about their project and move them in another direction. So I enjoy that front end phase. And even as qualifying them, I, I, I still want them to refer us when the time is right for that proper fit. So just as somebody that spent so much time focused on sales, I do think that gets missed a lot when people hear a phone call and it's a bad opportunity. They miss a chance to fan the flame of their excitement and ultimately leave a good taste in their mouth. Do you follow me on that?
Yeah, and so when you say like refer them to someone else, I mean, are we talking about like another contractor in the area who maybe could just come in and kind of get the work done instead of also doing the full
Right.
design?
More of an installer. So there's different fits in our field for what you're doing. There's an installer approach. There's going to be a design build approach. There's more of a GC approach, right? So just qualifying not only what we do, but qualifying what the customer's looking for and then pointing them in the right direction. Sometimes that's me. Sometimes that's other people that do good work in the area as well. But one thing I think your listeners might find useful too is specifically what we're selling. When we talk about quality, uh, a lot of people think that's a selling point. I think it should actually be kind of par for what we're doing. So I think there's a lot of people that do good quality work in terms of the actual install, but what you're selling, they should be able to see that on your pictures. They should assume you're doing good quality. It's this long-term relationship that is this massive variable in what we do and in what we sell. So I am constantly building trust, asking questions, building a relationship, hopefully giving them peace of mind, clear communication, and ultimately building trust. And what I mean by trust is like appearing reasonable, right? They should think that I'm just a reasonable guy that they can work through things with in the same way, like when you're dating somebody, right? You're kind of like evaluating them on a lot of different ways. Not only are you just hanging out, but you're kind of evaluating how conflict would go, how they would react to things, how they would handle my issues. Are they going to be okay? The fact that I'm really detail oriented, all these kind of things. So what I like to really focus on is I don't explicitly go there, but am always thinking that how am I showing that this is a good long-term relationship fit?
Yeah.
Because it's the longest sales cycle, I think, of any service industry, if you really think about it.
Yeah, so I mean, because even if this project, maybe they just need a quick install, not a good fit for you guys, but you never know what that next project, maybe now they want to go do the kitchen or they want to do an addition or something like that, where they're going to think about you as a great resource. I think you're totally right. I hear so many times, the contractor just like their goal is as quickly as possible to just determine, is this a good fit or not? If not, they're trying to bail, because they don't want to, waste their time. But at the end of the day, like, man, there's nothing worse than hearing somebody who got a 1-star review from somebody who, like, they weren't even a customer, but like they just didn't go that extra step to help make sure that they find the right person. It really is a missed opportunity, as you put it there. So I couldn't agree more. And again, I think there's a lot of opportunities to partner with some of those other, those other people in your industry, the other contractors, because you never know, like, maybe that, they're better suited for these smaller projects, but when they get something that's over their head, they're going to think about, well, man, this guy's been sending me a bunch of stuff. Maybe it's an opportunity for me to give him one, and it could be a great lead source for you.
And even then, when they talk to their uncle who has the really big house, that guy's going to want a lot more design approach, they would still refer you even though you weren't a good fit.
Yeah.
So you leave that good taste in their mouth. I think the other interesting thing is too about the trust I want to kind of talk about is, I don't know if people realize how like deeply personal our sale ends up being, in the sense of, I mean, think about how, I won't make you answer this, Eric. How many people have you had walk into your master bathroom, in your toilet area, in your walk-in closet? How many people get in there? Probably no one beyond you and your wife.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to someone on an initial phone call, it's amazing how it's the same conversation I always have, like, oh, don't mind my mess, or I can see they put things over top of things, or I'm looking at their toilet that is not cleaned. You need to be the kind of person that they actually are comfortable bringing into these environments.
Yeah.
And building that trust so that they can admit that they actually really want a bidet seat, and you're not going to make some weird joke about it.
Yeah.
You got to get into all these personal conversations about how they're going to shave their legs in the shower. And so one of the ways I kind of go into building trust on that is, I actually have a video on our email tag that says "Get to know me." So upon first contact, they can see a little bit like, who is Tyler? Like, what kind of vibe does he have? What kind of smile does he have? Is he friendly? What does he like to talk about? So I'll give them a little introduction about myself, because I'm coming into their house, not only into their house, into their bathroom, into their closet, and I see their dirty laundry basket there. All these little things that ultimately, I think, lead you to clearer conversation if that trust is built, that they're comfortable with you being in very vulnerable spaces. Do you follow me on that?
Oh yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, the more that they can feel like they already know you by watching a video, by learning more about you, like it does, it warms that first conversation. And so yeah, I've seen that guy around. Like, I know, like, versus it being like, wait, who's this guy? Like, it can be a little bit defensive for some people when they first meet someone. So I think that's a great strategy.
Yeah, even once I'm getting then in their home too, what a great opportunity to actually get to know them as people rather than just to get to know the project, because it's amazing how just simply tied together those things are. As I get into someone's kitchen in a first floor remodel, oh, we want to remove this wall. They might have an idea, and just simply asking a lot of questions is me diagnosing their space before I prescribe anything. Try to get a really good understanding of what exactly they want to accomplish and why. So like, one of the things I like to do too is I like to transition their initial, maybe like specific, like I would like to have a butler's pantry across from my island over on this side. And I could get them excited. Oh, cool. Is that like going to be like a serving area when you have like a Super Bowl party? So you can put all your, and they might say, oh yeah, absolutely. And then their idea goes farther, or they correct me, but in a positive way. Actually, no, what we're thinking here, this is going to be our drink bar. And I can go, oh, you want a drink bar? So I want to keep opening that up, but rather than just by asking boring questions on a checklist, I can keep fanning the flame, fanning the flame, get them excited. Remember, a lot of these people watch HGTV. They're excited about their project. So I need to fan the flame. I need to keep them excited because I'm excited for them, or at least I should be.
Yeah, that's awesome.
One of the things I often reference back to is when I only got married once in my life. So I wanted to get a custom suit. So I went to buy a custom suit. And when I got there, I was excited, Eric. I don't know. I own one suit, and it's a custom suit. I got to pick the interior. I was all excited, and I got there, and they called up whatever her was, Martha. Martha came from the back out of her cigarette break. She still reeked of cigarettes. She said hello. She found out I was getting married, said congratulations. And in the next 7 minutes, she walked me through the steps without any excitement, without any fun. And I got a suit, but I got no experience on my once in a lifetime project. And I spent some money on that suit. I was very disappointed. I still wear it. It's a good looking suit, but I was kind of hoping for somebody to be excited and give me ideas and walk me through, find out who I was, what's my expression, my personality, and I got none of that. And I
Mm.
often think that that relates very directly to the way we approach remodeling, because unfortunately, it is easy to quick move through selections and kind of get it off of our plate. But that is why we do focus and have that as part of our name, the design remodel approach, because I care about it. I'm excited about it. And I think we should spend time together working on that rather than sending you to a specific store and then you just get back to me with whatever works.
Sure. So when you're kind of having these exploratory conversations, like are there certain things that you're listening for in that first meeting that you feel like are going to really help you to tailor the project and the experience to them?
I mean, my questions are very living and breathing. I don't go in with a checklist always, but most of the time I'm asking them specifically if they say they want an island. Well, tell me about this. Is it seating for four? Do you have breakfast here? I want to find out how they live now and also how they want to live. So I would say those are the two areas that I'm always focused on. How do they live now and how do they want to live? And one of my favorite questions is like, hey, when this project's done, like, tell me like what you'd be most excited for. Is it a Super Bowl party? Or do you host Easter? Is it breakfasts? You can sit there and watch the birds from your island, or tell me what you're most excited for. And it's amazing the variety of answers that you get because you
Yeah.
think it's going to be Thanksgiving, but then you find out, yeah, he actually just likes to eat his Cheerios right at this window, and that's what he's focused on. Little things like that.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, again, it's when you're living in the home, like that is what is going to, either make it very livable or it could make it miserable. Like, are there certain like, kind of aspects to when you have that opportunity to remodel, that every time you find that people get really excited about that, that potential for this change that will make that big impact for them. Is there anything like, that stands out?
I would say when particularly, well, the main thing we focus on, right, is the kitchen and bath. So I really love it when both homeowners are equally excited. There are a lot of times that it is a one-sided project where it's either a divorce or a kitchen kind of conversation. I do enjoy when there's a mutual excitement, but if there's not, that is a great opportunity for me to keep fanning the flame of whoever's seems a little disinterested. I need to find out what they want too,
Yeah.
because they're going to have their needs, and I need to look out for that person to keep them excited about the project. So, it's not so much about me driving it. I'm just trying to fan their flame and ultimately find the flame of what is exciting them and what's ultimately driving them to this project.
So when you're having those meetings, are you trying to make sure that you've teed it up where, if there's, a husband and a wife or two partners or, who are like, are you trying to make sure that everyone's there in that initial meeting, or are you willing to take it with just the kind of the person who's leading this initiative?
I do ideally want them both there.
Yeah.
There are times that I do it without. I made it a huge deal early in my career, and I have learned that that's just not how every family works. So I've gone through an entire projects without a single meeting with one spouse.
Hmm.
I'm talking like 6-month projects. And they're traveling or working. So it's not an essential, but it is preferred. And I like to just learn about that relationship as we go along. But
Yeah.
my sales process is typically, an initial phone call, and that phone call is just a simple relationship building, finding out about the project. I might get some pictures sent over, and then I will go out on site, meet with them, walk through, get my pictures, get my measurements, but ultimately just asking a lot of questions, getting a lot of understanding of what their needs and wants are. And then we would have a follow up, either conversation or on site visit where I kind of go over the full process of what my new number range is and kind of laying out what the actual construction phase will look like.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, when do you bring up budget, and when do you first kind of start throwing out, something to help make sure that you guys are even in the right ballpark?
Mhm. I have found that might not probably never heard of this, but there's something called a cost versus value report. It's a nationally publicized document that gives general budget range based on a variety of real estate agents and brokers and industry studies. And they give out, it's about 24 different projects, and they give a numerical range. So what I have found fairly productive to do is if I feel like there is a real need to specifically talk about on an initial phone call, I like to somewhat prime the system and say, do you have any idea where a project like this might end up? And if they say, I have no clue, I can say, well, you know, one thing I like to reference is a national syndicated study called Cost versus Value. And it's in the Philadelphia market. It even specifically calls out our market, and it gives a general budget range of these areas. So rather than me telling them what my numbers are, I tell them what general numbers are. And then I can say my numbers are going to be in that general ballpark. So I find that to be a useful way of, rather than just asking Tyler what he charges, I can actually reference something specific that I can agree upon is accurate, rather than an internet search or some group they have on Facebook that tells them what it should be. So
Sure.
that is a nice, I enjoy that way of talking about something specific that we can talk about. And then I ultimately end up just, I like to just communicate as clearly as possible. I kind of have a saying of like, I like to kind of under promise, over deliver the whole way through. So rather than be the guy that kind of thinks this is going to be $100,000 project and ends up at 180, I'm going to tell you this could very well be $180,000 project, and then we'd whittle that into a specific as our selections and decisions go along. But it is a lot of arbitrary numbers, frankly. So that's why, circling back to the trust, like, do you trust what I'm telling you or not? And that's kind of a crux of the whole thing.
Gotcha. So once you get them kind of, we've had some good exploration, we've got some designs, you've got some ideas, or I guess kind of you're taking that back, and then you are creating the design. Do you have, like, do you charge for the design? Do they enter into some sort of an agreement going into this? Like, kind of walk us through that process?
Yeah. So the first two steps of the phone call, the meeting in person, getting my facts, my scope of work, then I have the second meeting after that, after I go crunch numbers. And I don't even like to use the word design, because I'm not sinking in 20 hours into design to simply bid a project. But I will typically give a general sketch, maybe some AI work, and give them an idea of what they're going to get, somewhat of an idea, without getting in. I won't give layouts with specific measurements, but I can help them visualize and see what they're going to get. And then I have a scope of work, which we just call preliminary estimate, preliminary budget review, right? So we're just going over a range of costs, and there are options, right? There's a lot of options that you're going to have in there. And that's just part of some of the variability that we're getting into. And ultimately, I'm hoping to be viewed as honest, truthful, and trustworthy and reasonable as we go along here. Because I mean, I've even told people there have been times that we've tried to give as close as exact estimates. I mean, literally estimating projects for initial scopes. And if that's off, I'm actually being more dishonest, because I'm basing all those on assumptions. So I'd rather give you a range that's a little more honest than a direct number that's kind of just a guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, so giving you a range. So I do not get to hard numbers until we do sign a actual preliminary design agreement. And that will be based on a percentage of the project and the details of those project. And then I can get them full estimated numbers. But we will start with a scope of work before I get to that.
Gotcha. And so does that fee end up, just kind of that's just part of the total cost, or what do you do with that? Does it end up getting credited back if they move forward? If they don't move forward, do they get to take the designs and
Yeah,
everything?
yeah. You would work off of it as like a retainer. So it is part of the final number and part of that initial kind of range that I give them. But if it ends up being, outside of the direction that they want to go, then I would have not wasted 25 hours of my time to get them there. But they would be moving in they would have a lot of their project figured out. And then
Sure.
that's what they're called, what they would do if they would go a different direction. So the whole idea is to not charge them for something that they're not going to end up doing. That is kind of worst case scenario in my book. So
So when you do get into the design, how do you help the homeowners like find that design that they like? Like how do you sort of work with them to, because there can be a lot of back and forth and little wishy-washy and they don't know. And, you got two people debating what's better. How do you sort of help navigate that?
yeah. So it's back to even that like suit analogy of rather than taking someone to a suit store and helping them pick out a suit, one item of pants with a tie, with an undershirt, with a jacket, and then you put them all together and you're like, woof, that's rough. That's a lot. What we would start by looking at is general views of what suits generally we like, what colors we generally like. So we start with an abstraction. I like to use things like Pinterest. I like to use things like Houzz. Houzz is a nice collaborative platform. Houzz is where I can send my potential customer a link. They can add photos of things that they like, or I say, what inspires you or what makes you think I could see myself living there. Don't get so obsessed with every little detail, but like take a look at a space. Could you see your family living in that space? Does that excite you? Keep it simple to start. Start macro. And if you see a picture and it's just like, oh, I love that kitchen. All right, note it, put it down, and we're going to look at it before you start studying and tearing it all apart. Because sometimes that first glimpse of a beautiful kitchen, when it actually comes time for you to select it, you'll think, oh, this is too boring. But that's the trap. You can get too many look at me pieces and it's just too much. A good simple kitchen is oftentimes very beautiful, but to actually get people to realize that in their selection phase, you have to get them to realize it in the actual like kind of general scope of work phase and establish where your main focal point wants to be. If you have a certain color tone or a certain look or texture that you want to highlight and focus in on, that will typically show up in that initial phase when they start falling in love with different pictures. So the reason I say that is Houzz is nice because you can collaborate. You can actually have them put all these photos on an album. And then from there, I can go through that album with their notes already on there. Because the funny thing about Pinterest is if they put an album together, you don't have any idea what they're looking at. They might put a picture of this kitchen. You're like, oh, so you love a nice sage green kitchen? And they're like, no, I like that floor. You're like, oh, geez, I was way off. So that's why Houzz is nice because you can actually kind of collaborate and put your notes all in one place. So
Sure.
that's a nice initial starting point.
So how do you handle when the client's budget, like it just does not match their wish list?
Mm. Well, you address it by what their priorities are. So, like, for instance, how long someone's planning on being in the home determines maybe how much we spend on their cabinetry. There's a whole world of cabinetry out there in terms of more of a stock to a full custom. And if they're thinking this home is the next 5 to 10 years, then maybe they don't go with the forever cabinetry option that's $40,000. Maybe they go with the $15,000 cabinetry option. And I'm certain it'll hold up well for the next 5 to 10 years. 25 years, it'll be there. I don't know how the paint finish will hold up on some of it, but those are kind of conversations that we can have to work them through that. And sometimes it is just showing them options and walking them through what those options are. I'm the consultant, right? So I'm helping you get to where you want to go, and that's kind
Yeah.
of the way I try to communicate to them.
So what do you think makes a client say yes to to one remodeler over another when the bids are close, fairly comparable? Like, what do you think that it is that actually wins that job for you?
Well, you know what's funny? is one thing I found is if you get a younger couple that has never done remodeling before, they might in fact go more towards price. But if you get someone that's been through remodeling before, a lot of times they know that there's a lot more at stake than the number. And it's amazing how many times, Eric, I have gone into a kitchen and I rather than saying, wow, what a beautiful kitchen, because I can tell it was just done. I might be there for their bathroom. They'll say, I'll say, "Oh, this looks like you just redid this kitchen." That's the way I'll ask the question to find out what's really going on. And a lot of times the reason I'm there is, "Oh, what a disaster." But you know what, Eric? It's actually a beautiful kitchen. It's actually done very well, I can tell. But getting there was horrible. They hated it. It was a disaster, but they actually got the kitchen. So it's very interesting that that is something that in our industry, I think is different than most, that you can get the product in the end, but it can be a terrible experience that you would never recommend that that contractor. So when I work with people, and typically going over all of this, right? It's like kind of getting back to what I talked about, like building trust, building building the relationship so that you can handle some hard conversations, because that's kind of part of these relationships too. There's a lot of conversations
Yeah.
and touch points that you get into.
So when you're talking with a potential client and they're describing this this experience that they went through with another contractor and it sounds like it just wasn't a good one. Like, do you see any common themes or kind of just things that keep coming up over and over where like it's like these contractors are doing that same thing that just leads to a poor customer experience? Like, have you ever kind of seen any commonalities across these different conversations that you're hearing about?
I would say a lot of them are around the relationship. Like ultimately, when you really get deep down, it's about the relationship in terms of communication, timelines, delays. Um, who is this random sub that came in that I don't feel comfortable with? And the ultimately, if you take all those variables, to me, it comes back down to the communication and did the contractor own it or try to talk it away and help them walk through that. So to me, it still is back to the relationship piece, even though there's a lot of other pieces under that umbrella. You follow me on that?
Yeah, and again, I think the one known we know about construction is that there will always be the unknowns, and just situations are going to come up, and I think you're totally right. It's how you handle that situation, and so like I'm curious, again, like you're exploring this project with some people. Like, how do you reassure them that you're not going to be just like that last contractor who you know had a great design, had a, promise them the world and a great experience, but then like, they end up falling short. Like, how do you help somebody get over that fear, that poor experience that they had last time? Like, cause that's gotta be just irking the back of their mind. Like, man, this just sounds like that same situation, but like, it didn't have anything to do with you on the sales side. It's when we actually get into the project and everything out of that. Like, how do you kind of reassure people about, it's not going to be a repeat?
Yeah, I I I will often. This is kind of a funny answer, but I will oftentimes just ask a lot more questions about what they have going on, and just keep opening up the wound. Essentially, like find out what happened here, and ultimately that lays me a great blueprint for the way I communicate in the future with them, because I
Mm,
know their pain that they've gone through before. So I don't look at it necessarily like I'm selling. I can think of one or two times that someone has literally kind of said, "How are you going to improve on this?" But if I find out their pain, then that helps the way I communicate all my steps and find out what exactly that will just really bother them. And honestly, a lot of the time it is just communication as
yeah.
I find out. But you know what's kind of funny, Eric? I have a strange passion in my job, and it is around hard conversations. I think hard conversations are something that is it's just kind of built into our industry. And when you see it on HGTV, it's always like, "Oh no, look, we have a sewer line coming down this wall." Oh, we'll tell you more after the commercial break. Yeah, and it always seems like, but like in real life, this is really tough stuff to have to tell someone about $7,000 or $15,000 change order, and it's the way I think we go about this from a contractor standpoint is just massive in the entire thing. So like, I find I'm like very passionate in like feeling their pain and being right there with them and trying to digest it all. So like one of the things I would typically do is just like one of the things I've learned, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos on this and some negotiating classes and things like that. But one of the things I've learned is to to get right to the point. Don't small talk around it and then throw out the huge fish on the table. It's get right to the point and prepare them that they're not going to like what this is, but also give them agency in their decisions. Like let them walk them through all the problem solving pieces of why are we here? What are our other options? Give them every option you can possibly give them to help them make the right decision, not give them the only option.
Yeah.
Ask them to make that decision.
So what do you think the biggest mistakes are that you see remodelers make in the design phase?
I would say the biggest mistake you can walk into in the design phase is not updating your budget and your numbers as the project scales,
Mm,
because the project will scale or change or climb. And if you start at a range and then you go through a month of design and you don't update anything, don't communicate clearly, you could end up in an entirely different world. And that is not good communication, which ultimately leads to contracts not getting signed.
yeah, that's yeah, makes total sense. So I'm also curious. I mean, again, you've won the NARI Contractor of the Year award. You've made Pro Remodelers 40 under 40. What opened up these doors, and what would you tell someone else who, would love that kind of industry recognition?
Hmm. Industry recognition, I'm not sure about that. I would say in terms of what I would recommend is just the goal at the end of the project is always the referral and the review. And with that kind of in mind from the beginning, all your interactions with them ultimately end up leading towards that goal, which ultimately should turn into more work and a positive reputation. If you can keep that as your main focus, even from the very first phone call all the way to the end, that's it. Like, I think that's really it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you have NARI certifications in universal design and kitchen and bath remodeling. Like, have those certifications, made an impact on your ability and your work? And do you think would that have helped?
Right. So NARI is the National Association of the Remodeling Industry. They offer a variety of certifications. I would definitely recommend them. We even have some of our field guys do them. It keeps you up to date on some standards. It definitely gives you more formal training on what we're talking about here, and particularly in the I would say the most important for me of those two would be the kitchen and bath design aspect to kind of give you very well versed industry knowledge on all that. It's quite a test, but it's worth your time.
Yeah.
And then yeah, being specific about like universal design kind of envelops a lot of different things. So I would say that focusing on developing yourself in your craft, even under formal certifications, I think is important. I don't know why in remodeling it doesn't always seem as important as other industries. Maybe the names aren't as fancy, but I do think it is just as important as those other industries to get yourself certified.
Sure. Second ago, you mentioned, kind of the after the project and the follow up and trying to win the reviews, things like that. Can you kind of tell us what does that look like for you guys? How do you do that post project, the wrap up, the kind of, after the fact? What's your process look like there?
Yeah. After after the fact, we would typically, be obviously collecting the final check, and then we would typically have a 30 days after the project's complete, a percentage due as well as kind of a client reassurance that their project, if we have to go back and adjust their drawers in their kitchen because now the weight of the silverware they're not sliding as well or something. We can go back and adjust those things. Kind of gives them a peace of mind. But by that point, I would say that peace of mind comes on the front end, because when they're signing the contract, because by that point, the trust is already built and they know we're not going anywhere. But that's more of a front end trust builder. And then, a final walk around. I spent an hour and a half the other day in a kitchen just talking about their life and finding out about what's been going on, talking about their new kitchen, how it's going to be used, how they're storing things. And that's kind of the fun part to me. Seeing how they're moving in, the exciting things that their brother-in-law said about their kitchen. I love hearing all that. I love hearing the feedback on how they have like this beautiful new space that the whole family, even extended family, is super excited to come and see. And that's fun. I like hearing the personal side. Like, tell me what your aunt said again. That was awesome. Like, I like that.
Again, it sounds awesome. It sounds like you're having a great really fulfillment from seeing you actually deliver something that's made a meaningful impact in that client's life. Again, aside from that, how do you parlay that into, are you asking for referrals? Are those just come naturally? Are you asking for the reviews? Or those, you just kind of letting those happen? Like, is there something else that kind of these follow-up conversations can lead to? Maybe another project?
So to be frank, the last company I was at, we tried every little thing of email drips, of like, we even had a scannable card that you flashed over your phone. It took you right to the website. It all still comes back to just when I'm at your house, asking for a review and actually even showing them how to do it if they're an older person, and like walking them through the link. That is still the old fashioned way, still 95 out of 100 times I can do it that way rather than sending an email. I still do it, send the email asking for a referral, but I still enjoy in person the most.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten into a situation where a client just isn't quite happy with something, and how do you handle that?
Well, definitely. A lot of times though, the client isn't happy with something because we're not done yet. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
as the project's building, they're seeing something, and meanwhile, the project manager's like, "Well, yeah, I'm give me some time. I'm getting there." And then if something comes in at the end, we think we're done, but they think we aren't. We then just have to get back to our general discussions of what our expectations are. And remember, if they assume that I'm reasonable, then we can reasonably talk about this conversation. If they assume I'm not reasonable, then these are hard conversations.
No.
But hopefully I'm still the reasonable Tyler that they got in the beginning. And then we can talk about these things like a man and a woman, or a man to man, about what needs to be done. Or I'll be honest with you, that's not really part of what we're doing, and talk about why. And if they can understand that, then we can keep moving. If they can't, then I need to do better of explaining why.
Yeah. Well, look, I can already tell. I would love to have you as my contractor. I can see the passion, just flowing through you, and just how excited you get. And I think you're so right that, like, when people bring that, to the table, and they can really try to focus on making this an enjoyable, a fun, exciting time. Like, this is, again, this is arguably probably the largest investment these people will ever make. Their most valuable asset. And like, they should be so excited to make that investment. And like, I think I believe in energies. I think, when people come in with that energy, that excitement, like it elevates the entire room. It makes everybody around you that much more excited. It's contagious. And so, again, I have no doubt that has made, you so successful. I mean, you have built an award-winning career, inside of a company. I mean, even rather than starting your own, you have been able to create this phenomenal, career, and you've made a huge impact, within your company there. I mean, I'm curious, like, what would you say to all the talented project managers, lead carpenters, all those people out there who are listening, who probably assume that their only way up is to start their own business and to, to be a business owner and have to go back and just build it from scratch. Like what would you say to them? Because, you clearly have found a great path forward and you have really been able to maximize the opportunity that you've got here. And I mean, again, you've done a phenomenal job within a company. Like what would you say to those out there who might not realize that they can do that same thing as well?
Yeah. I think I kind of hate how cliche this feels, but I think if you have a distinct passion's a strong word, but if you have a distinct real energy around something that you can do of high quality and it does excite you to do it to a high quality, you've heard that before, but here's what I would recommend. Find a company that appreciates that in you. If you feel appreciated that and you get energy from doing it, I think you will be rewarded because that company will find what you're doing. Like, I love what Tyler does. Like, I know I can give him a job and he's going to go and do a good job and he'll be proud of that job. I think a lot of people have that energy and they know that they're getting good or can be good or are good at something. But if they don't feel appreciated by where they're at, it can die on the vine and become a bitter, resentful experience, even though the talent and the quality is there. So finding that where you can feel appreciated and recognized, just simply recognized for what you're doing, I think will continue to bring more fruit in your career. And my piece of advice on that would be like, it is, and I needed this too. It's a bigger world than you think. Sometimes you think there's not other opportunities out there, but you do have to just look and put yourself out there. And I think God leads you in different directions and ultimately, there's a plan for you. So keep looking. If you're not being appreciated and you feel you have some skills that you're building towards, but find where you can be appreciated and look for that. And I think you'll know.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And again, I think too, it's about remembering that, like, for you, I mean, Tyler, you come in and you deliver a great experience on the front end of these projects, but in order for that to actually be fulfilled, you need that team of people around you who are going to be able to deliver on that experience and on that promise. And so, like, again, it's about making sure that you are with the right team and the right people who not only appreciate you, but can live up to that high standard, that bar that you are setting, that expectation that you expect and that the client expects. Like, there's probably nothing more frustrating than being on a team where, like, they're just going to under deliver every time. And that makes your job even harder, so, like, I think it's about really finding that right company, that right team, those people that truly embody, the values and the mission, the vision of the organization, so that everybody's on the same page and everybody is executing at that high caliber.
Absolutely. It's all about team. It's always about team.
No.
You're exactly right.
So look, I really appreciate you sharing, a little bit more about your process. And again, it's very obvious to me, how you have been able to build such a great career and have had so much success. But, I want to just, kind of this final question, I want to open it up, to you. Like, what is the best piece of advice that you would give, to contractors, to builders, to people who, are in similar situation or maybe earlier on in their career? Like, what is that one or two pieces of advice that you think would make the biggest impact on them?
I think we can get this off the top of my head here, so I haven't thought about this, but I think we can get so caught up with the details and the day-to-day drudgery of the lumber and tile and siding and footers and rafters that we're doing that we forget it's still a people exchange. And it's all about the people and it's all about the client experience and the service that we're giving them as people. And hopefully we have a great relationship down the road. Like, I love that if I can keep that front and center, I love that I can text an old customer about a random sporting event and we can just talk about that. Or I love that I can just drive by and wave and stop in and see him out there. Like, I love those kind of relationships that happen and I'm running into them at Ace Hardware or something like that. Those, to me, that's actually like the real fruit of my labor, I would say, that the relationships that end up coming from them.
That's awesome, man. I love that. I think at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. Like, people are buying from people. People's experience is dictated by, the people that they're working with, the people that are showing up every day. I mean, I think it is so important that, we all focus on delivering a great customer experience, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be challenges with construction, but like, I can promise you, like, 6-12 months down the road, like, that person, that your client, they're not going to remember the intricate details of the build and what came up and this and that. But what they are going to remember is how you made them feel when that situation arose. Like, were you proactive? Did you communicate? Did you hold their hand and navigate them through the process to reassure them that it would all end up all right? Like, it's all about our feelings and our relationships. And you have said it best here today, Tyler. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to come on and share, your experience and how you have built such a great company, how you deliver such great customer experiences. It's very apparent. Your work is awesome. So I want to thank you for being a great role model for everyone else out there, and for just sharing what has worked really well for you guys.
Hey, I appreciate that, Eric. This was a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tyler. We'll see you soon.
All right, have a good day. See ya.
All right, bye. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Builder Stories. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained valuable insights that can help you in your journey along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. And as always, if you or someone you know has a story to share, please contact us at builderstories.com. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Eric Fortenberry, and remember, every builder has a unique story. Keep building yours.